Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the fascinating and very complex story of a company that has just in a little over a decade completely redefined urban logistics, modern commerce, and frankly, how we get our food.
We're talking about DoorDash, of course.
We are talking about DoorDash Inc.
And it is a compelling subject. When you sent us this incredible stack of sources, we have articles, legal documents, financial reports, it became so clear that the story here isn't just about market success.
No, not at all.
It's a masterclass in aggressive, capital-fueled scaling, immediately followed by the continuous quantifiable cost of operating that scale right at the razor's edge of the legal and ethical framework of the modern gig economy.
That dual nature is precisely our mission today. We've got material covering the company's incredibly humble start, its rapid global expansion, fueled by these massive acquisitions like Wolt and Deliveroo.
And crucially, the decade-long battlefront of litigation. It involves every single stakeholder. Their workers, their customers, regulators across multiple continents, and their core competitors. It's relentless.
So our goal is to extract the key insights from all this material. We need to understand the strategy that allowed DoorDash to achieve its, undeniable 56% market share dominance in U.S. food delivery, as documented in our sources.
And then analyze what the cumulative visible price tag of that success has been. We're not just going to list milestones. We want to really analyze the structure of a revolutionary and, very often criticized business model.
And the scale they've achieved is truly astonishing, especially when you think about the starting point. This all began as PaloAltoDelivery.com in January 2013.
Just 4 Stanford students. Tony Zhu, Andy Fang, Stanley Tang, and Evan Moore. It was such a hyper-local idea.
Right. Fast forward to 2024, and the numbers are just on a completely different planet. The operational scope today is massive.
Yeah. It's huge. We're talking 23,700 corporate employees, 450,000 listed merchants, and this is the big one, over 1 million delivery couriers globally, and that's according to data from a few years back. In 2020, it's a logistics machine.
And a profitable machine, which is a major shift for a tech giant this young. Their 2024 revenue hit $10.7 billion, and significantly, they actually reported a net income of $123 million.
Which is key. This isn't a perpetually unprofitable growth engine anymore. This is a Fortune 500 company, ranked number 443 in 2024, and it's wielding immense financial power.
Which naturally leads us to the question, how did they do it? How did they achieve that initial leap and go from 4 students to, the undisputed market hegemon in such a compressed time frame?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Let's jump into that journey right now with Section 1, From Startup to Market Hegemon, the Business and Financial Ascent.
So the origin story, as we said, PaloAltoDelivery.com, launched in January 2013. It was basically an analog marketplace, right? They were building a delivery network for local businesses that just didn't have one. Exactly. And that simple idea got crucial validation very, very quickly. Just 6 months after they launched, they were accepted into the highly influential Y Combinator program.
Okay, the Kingmaker.
The Kingmaker.
Yeah.
The sources note they got $120,000 in seed money in exchange for a 7% stake. And that immediate injection of capital and, maybe more importantly, mentorship, is what allowed them to incorporate as DoorDash in June 2013 and start thinking beyond just being a regional player.
That Y Combinator stamp of approval so often changes the whole trajectory. It takes a local service and turns it into this ambitious national or even global endeavor.
And their expansion strategy wasn't just about moving city by city. It was about integrating with established massive corporate chains. That was the secret sauce early on.
Right, that's the key strategic lever. They focused on securing major partnerships that instantly gave them massive volume and, I suppose, a lot of perceived legitimacy.
Think about the April 2016 deal with CKE Restaurants.
That's the parent company of Carl's Jr. and Hardee's.
Yep. And this meant DoorDash could suddenly service a huge pre-existing customer base across tons of markets, all of whom wanted fast food delivery. It was instant scale.
And they followed that same model again in December 2017 with Wendy's. So what does integrating these huge national fast food chains signal to the market, especially when competitors like Grubhub were still, often focused on local or maybe higher-end restaurants?
It signaled a readiness for mass market infrastructure. These deals established delivery not as some added luxury, but as a standard, high-volume operational component for every single quick-service restaurant.
So it positioned DoorDash as the network built for speed and efficiency.
Exactly. Not just for exclusivity. And this preparation, this focus, allowed them to execute what our sources call the dominance shift.
And that shift is just incredible to watch play out in the data. The market was already crowded. You had Uber Eats, Postmates, Grubhub.
But in December 2018, DoorDash officially overtook Uber Eats in total U.S. food delivery sales. That put them in second place, right behind Grubhub.
But the real turning point came so fast after that.
Unbelievably fast. By March 2019, they exceeded Grubhub in total sales, grabbing 27.6% of the on-demand delivery market. This happened in less than 6 years of operation.
And just like that, they became the largest food delivery provider in the entire U.S. by consumer spending.
It's an incredible consolidation of power.
That level of rapid market consolidation has to be for more than just good marketing, right?
Right.
What were the underlying factors that let them outpace even Uber's massive infrastructure?
Well, the sources point to a few things. First, aggressive pricing and promotions, all financed by massive amounts of venture capital, and we'll get to that war chest in a moment.
Okay.
And second, a real focus on optimizing their logistics network in suburban and, exurban markets. These were areas a lot of competitors initially neglected in favor of those dense urban centers.
So they went where the others weren't.
They focused on accessibility and scale over exclusivity. And it clearly paid off.
It really did. If we look at their present market position, that dominance isn't just maintained, it's solidified. They command 56% market share in U.S. food delivery.
And crucially, they command an even larger share in adjacent sectors. Our sources highlight their 60% market share in the convenience delivery category.
That's huge. That proves the investment was in the logistics platform itself, not just the restaurant vertical.
That's it. They successfully built the primary delivery infrastructure for both food and retail convenience.
But to fuel a conquest like that, you need money. Lots and lots of money. So let's look at the financial fuel that drove this takeover. The private funding and that spectacular public market debut.
The scale of capital they accumulated is just staggering. By June 2020, even before the IPO, they had raised over $2.5 billion from heavyweight venture capital firms.
We're talking about the big ones.
The biggest. Sequoia Capital, SoftBank Group, Kleiner Perkins. And this influx of cash gave them the ability to subsidize growth, run predatory pricing campaigns, and just simply outspend rivals on driver incentives and customer promotions.
That ability to absorb losses in the pursuit of market share is the hallmark of Silicon Valley's scale-up strategy.
And it all culminated in one of the most talked-about initial public offerings of the decade.
Indeed. On December 9th, 2020, they went public, raising a massive $3.37 billion.
And this IPO valued the company at an eye-watering $71 billion. I mean, just think about that valuation for a second. $71 billion for a company that facilitates restaurant delivery.
It positioned it instantly among the top tier of publicly traded tech companies in the world.
And you have to remember the context. That valuation came right in the middle of the pandemic, when delivery services were absolutely booming.
Did the sources address concerns that this valuation was maybe inflated by that temporary demand?
Oh, absolutely. Analysts at the time were very vocal, expressing concern that the valuation reflected peak pandemic usage rather than, sustainable long-term fundamentals.
Well, but they've held on.
They have. The subsequent years have shown DoorDash successfully defending and even expanding its market share, which has mitigated some of those initial bubble fears.
And the confidence in their long-term stability is confirmed by two other recent milestones. They didn't just stay on the New York Stock Exchange.
No, they sought a change that really speaks to market maturity. In 2023, they executed a stock listing transfer from the NYSE to the NASDAQ.
And more importantly, that move resulted in their inclusion in the prestigious NASDAQ 100 index in December of 2023.
Right. And for our listener, we should probably explain what the practical significance of that is.
Go ahead. What does moving to and getting into the NASDAQ 100 really mean?
It's a confirmation of stability and permanence. The NASDAQ 100 is composed of the 100 largest non-financial companies listed on the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
Inclusion means that every major index fund, every passive investment strategy that tracks the NASDAQ 100 is now automatically buying and holding DoorDash stock.
So it validates their status as an established financial institution.
Exactly. Not just a risky tech startup anymore. They moved from a volatile growth stock to an index blue chip stock in really short order.
And if the NASDAQ 100 inclusion speaks to financial stability, then the Fortune 500 ranking confirms their sheer economic scale.
That's the other shoe dropping. The 2024 ranking at number 443 on the Fortune 500 list, backed by that $10.7 billion in revenue and $12.8 billion in total assets. It just confirms they are no longer just a digital platform.
They're a massive, systemically important economic entity that basically dictates terms in the delivery market now.
They're the ones in the driver's seat.
Okay, so we've established the domestic success, the financial war chest, and the market dominance. And they use that $71 billion valuation and their billions in cash reserves to do one thing: buy the world.
That's a good way to put it.
Let's shift now to Section 2, global reach and portfolio diversification, acquisitions and expansion.
So once DoorDash achieved that domestic hegemony, the mandate shifted. It went from fighting competitors at home to just eliminating the barriers to entry abroad. They used capital to achieve immediate global scale.
They started laying the international groundwork pretty early on, actually, beginning with Toronto, Canada, way back in 2015. But the serious global push, the one that required all that capital, that began outside of North America.
That real expansion started in Melbourne, Australia in 2019. Australia really served as a testing ground for non-North American markets. Then came this rapid-fire expansion in 2021.
Right, we saw Sendai, Japan in June, then Stuttgart, Germany in November.
And by June 2022, they added New Zealand, starting with the Wellington region. But these are all attempts to organically grow their presence, and, organic growth is slow.
And when you have billions in the bank and a mandate for rapid dominance, you don't wait for slow growth.
You buy it.
You buy it. Which brings us to the Wolt and Deliveroo strategy.
This is the textbook case study in using M&A for instant global market saturation. In November 2021, DoorDash acquired Finland's Wolt in a deal valued at €7 billion.
Which was over $8.1 billion at the time.
An enormous sum. But Wolt was this massive strategic asset. It immediately gave DoorDash entry into 23 new countries across Europe and Asia, where Wolt had already established logistical networks and, customer loyalty.
So they bought a ready-made empire, and that $8 billion acquisition was huge, but they followed it up with another major European player.
The UK-based Deliveroo, acquired in May 2025 for $3.88 billion.
So if Wolt was the beachhead in Northern and Eastern Europe,
then Deliveroo consolidated their position in the highly valuable and intensely competitive UK market. The sources note that this combination achieved exactly what it was meant to. By late 2025, the consolidated company operates across 45 countries worldwide.
They literally bought the infrastructure and market share necessary to become a global delivery giant overnight.
Exactly. It's an aggressive, capital-heavy strategy designed to minimize the painful, expensive, and time-consuming process of building relationships with restaurants, hiring sales teams, and establishing courier networks from scratch in dozens of different countries.
They just purchased ready-made ecosystems.
That's it. And beyond geography, they also use all this capital to diversify the types of goods they deliver. It's no longer just about the food you order from a menu.
That diversification really started accelerating as they gained market power domestically around 2020.
Right. They realized their greatest asset was their logistical network, not just their list of restaurants. So they started offering grocery delivery in California and the Midwest in August of 2020.
Then came the technical improvement that really encouraged cross-category shopping, DoorDash in 2021.
And DoorDash is clever. It allows customers to order from multiple merchants, say a burger from restaurant A and, some toiletries from a convenience store in a single trip without paying two separate delivery fees.
Which immediately makes their platform more competitive against traditional retail delivery services.
Absolutely. Then they also expanded into regulated and higher margin delivery categories, like alcohol. They started that in 20 U.S. states, Washington, D.C., Canada, and Australia in 2021.
And if we look even further afield, the September 2025 partnership with Ace Hardware is extremely telling.
It really is. This allows on-demand delivery for home improvement products from over 4,000 locations. And this proves the core vision. DoorDash sees itself as an infrastructure utility, capable of delivering any product that fits in a bag or a box, not just a meal.
This expansion beyond traditional food delivery required not just global market penetration, but technical superiority and control over the entire hospitality tech stack.
Yes.
So let's unpack the technology and hospitality acquisitions, because they really reveal the long-term plan here.
And these acquisitions show DoorDash moving from being a simple delivery middleman to becoming a crucial technology partner for the entire restaurant and retail sector.
Let's start with the one that speaks to minimizing labor costs in the distant future, Scotty Labs in 2019.
Right. Scotty Labs was a teleoperations startup focused on self-driving technology. And even though the technology isn't widespread yet, The acquisition signals a deep, long-term strategic goal.
Which is to automate the dasher role entirely.
Completely. If they can remove the human labor component, they eliminate their single largest variable cost and, frankly, the root cause of so much of their legal trouble.
Then came the $410 million acquisition of Caviar, also in 2019. Why was Caviar so critical, given DoorDash was already the market leader?
Caviar was essential because it specialized in delivery from upscale urban area restaurants. We're talking the high-end, independent establishments that often resisted partnering with the existing big delivery platforms.
Ah, so it was a move-up market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By acquiring Caviar, DoorDash instantly moved upmarket, securing higher-ticket, more profitable orders, and expanding their merchant base into sectors that were previously inaccessible to them.
And then the one that always raises eyebrows, Chowbotics, the salad-making robot company, acquired in 2021.
It sounds like a quirky tangent, I know. But it reveals the extent of their ambition. Chowbotics, which was previously valued at around $46 million, developed automated food preparation technology.
So this acquisition points to vertical integration. DoorDash isn't just delivering food. It's interested in optimizing and automating the efficiency of food preparation inside the restaurant.
Precisely. They are aiming to be a full restaurant operations tech partner. And this intent is just cemented by the two critical software acquisitions, Bebot in 2022 and then 7Rooms in 2025.
Bebot provided digital ordering and payment solutions for restaurants. That seems logical control, the point of sale.
It is logical. But the $1.2 billion all-cash acquisition of 7Rooms, a premium restaurant booking and guest experience platform, is arguably the most transformative step.
Why is that?
Because 7Rooms moves DoorDash far beyond just delivery logistics and into controlling the entire customer-to-restaurant relationship. That includes reservations, loyalty programs, and data analytics.
Regardless of whether the customer chooses to dine in, take out, or order delivery.
That's the key.
Wait, so this positions DoorDash to compete directly with companies like Toast or even OpenTable?
Exactly. They are competing to own the entire software stack for restaurants. If they control the booking platform, the ordering system, and the delivery infrastructure, they become indispensable.
They're no longer a delivery service.
They are the central operating system for a huge segment of the hospitality industry.
And to complete this picture of physical expansion, let's look at their experiments with physical presence. They aren't just selling software, they are testing physical space optimization.
The first step was the ghost kitchen model.
Mm.
In October 2019, they opened the first DoorDash kitchen in Redwood City, California, housing 4 separate restaurants.
And this maximizes the efficiency of the delivery platform by concentrating preparation in a location that's optimized purely for courier logistics, not for the customer experience.
Right. And then they actually opened a physical restaurant location.
Yes, in November 2020, partnering with Burma Bites in the Bay Area, they opened DoorDash's first physical restaurant.
And this space was specifically designed and optimized entirely for rapid delivery and pickup orders. This acts as a real-world lab for testing operational efficiency at the merchant level.
They're providing crucial data back to their software engineers about how to better run a delivery-centric restaurant.
That's it.
What stands out here is the relentless, multifaceted strategic expansion. They scaled, they IPO'd, they bought the globe with Wolt and Deliveroo, and they bought the future with Scotty Labs and 7Rooms.
But this incredible success story has a profound dark side, and it centers entirely on the cost of labor.
Let's move now to Section 3, the price of the gig economy, worker classification, and tipping disputes.
This section gets to the core structural contradiction of the entire gig economy model. DoorDash's ability to grow so rapidly and achieve profitability rests very heavily on classifying its workers as independent contractors rather than employees.
Which avoids providing costly benefits, payroll taxes, minimum wage guarantees, and worker protections.
All of it. And that structure has been under legal attack almost from the very beginning. The core battle dates back to the 2017 class action lawsuit alleging misclassification of Deliveroo drivers in California and Massachusetts.
What was the central argument of the plaintiffs in that case?
The argument was simple. DoorDash dictates the terms of service, it sets the pricing structure, it monitors performance, and it can unilaterally terminate the contract. Therefore,
the drivers are functionally employees.
Exactly. And they should be entitled to standard employee protections, including reimbursement for expenses like gas and vehicle wear and minimum wage protections.
This litigation dragged on for years, right? And it culminated in a major headline-grabbing settlement in 2022.
The tentative $100 million settlement was reached to resolve this misclassification claim. But the sources highlight a highly critical breakdown of that allocation.
This is where the narrative tension is just its greatest. Of that $100 million total, the documentation shows that only $61 million was actually distributed to the over 900,000 drivers involved in the class action.
Which, if you do the math, it averages out to just over $130 per driver.
$130.
Meanwhile, $28 million went to the lawyers managing the case.
Let's just pause and reflect on that, because that number is just jarring. $130 for years of alleged misclassification and lost benefits for a worker versus $28 million for the legal team.
This is why the sources characterize the settlement as a manageable cost of doing business, rather than a real reckoning for labor rights.
And the most searing criticism, which was noted in our materials from Gizmodo, drew a direct comparison to the executive suite.
Ah, yes. The comparison between the driver payout and the CEO's compensation.
Right. The publication juxtaposed that $130 average payout per driver against the massive $413 million compensation package that CEO Tony Zhu received the previous year.
And that comparison just drives home the inherent conflict in the gig economy model. You have immense capital accumulation and personal wealth creation at the very top, subsidized by hundreds of thousands of undercompensated contract workers who receive minimal redress for systemic labor violations.
It raises a critical question. If the cost of settling a massive multi-year misclassification lawsuit is only $130 per worker, what incentive does the company have to change its fundamental classification model?
From a purely financial perspective, very little. The settlement acts as a kind of insurance against further retroactive claims, but it doesn't fundamentally change the economic structure that allows them to remain so competitive on pricing and service speed.
Let's move on to another massive labor controversy. The infamous tip withholding scandal. This was a public relations nightmare and a huge legal liability for them.
It was a structural deception that sparked immediate public outrage starting in 2019. And to understand the scandal, you have to understand the initial policy mechanism. DoorDash guaranteed drivers a minimum payment per order. Let's say it was $7.
Okay. And the core controversy was that when a customer tipped, that tip money was used by the company first to cover that guaranteed minimum.
Exactly. If the guaranteed minimum was $7 and the customer tipped $5, DoorDash would only contribute $2 of its own money. It used the customer's $5 tip to fulfill the $7 guarantee.
So the driver only received the portion of the tip that went above the minimum.
Right. The customer thought they were adding to the driver's pay, but in reality, they were just subsidizing DoorDash's operational costs.
That is just materially misleading, as the legal documents later confirmed. The backlash was widespread and immediate. The New York Times, The Verge, Vox, they all covered it extensively in July 2019.
Which swiftly led to a customer-filed class action lawsuit calling the practice materially false and misleading. The customers felt completely duped. They realized their generosity was simply offsetting corporate expense.
And even after DoorDash promised a major overhaul because of all the public pressure, the manipulation allegations just continued. What did the sources show happening in early 2020?
In January 2020, reports emerged suggesting that even after changing the stated policy, the company was still manipulating per-delivery payouts to keep driver earnings low.
So they were still finding ways to game the system.
One highly cited study in our sources reported that after factoring in expenses like gas and maintenance, drivers were earning an average of just $1.45 per hour.
$1.45 an hour. That figure, if it's accurate, just demonstrates how tenuous the economic survival of a dasher can be.
The regulatory hammer eventually dropped. In November 2020, the D.C. Attorney General, Karl Racine, settled a lawsuit with DoorDash for $2.5 million, specifically over these deceptive tipping practices.
They were forced to pay back money and adjust their disclosures.
But the fight for transparency didn't end there. The drivers themselves became increasingly proactive. The sources noted a really significant development in July 2021, a driver strike.
And it was specifically protesting the continued lack of tip transparency.
Exactly. They weren't just asking for more money. They were asking for more information before they accepted a job. They wanted to see the full tip amount advertised up front so they could gauge the true profitability of a delivery run before committing their time and their gas.
And this demand for transparency was actively resisted by the company?
Oh, yeah. Our sources confirmed that DoorDash went so far as rewriting its own platform code to block third-party apps, like the popular driver tool Para, which drivers were using to get around the platform's opacity and see that critical tip information.
That corporate action just demonstrates the high value DoorDash placed on controlling driver information and limiting their ability to, cherry pick the lucrative orders.
The ultimate legal resolution for this controversy finally arrived with the 2025 class action lawsuit settlement, which focused again on this idea of tip docking.
Right, and in that one, DoorDash agreed to pay around $17 million.
For, once again, misleading both consumers and delivery workers by docking tips from driver pay. What this whole section shows is a clear, continuous pattern, not isolated incidents, of prioritizing platform efficiency and cost-saving measures over worker and consumer transparency.
Which results in these recurring multi-million-dollar legal costs, a truly high price for the gig economy model.
It is.
Now let's expand our view from labor relations to market conduct, looking at how their massive market power affects restaurants and consumers in Section 4, market conduct, pricing, and data privacy litigation.
When a company gets to 56% market share, the focus inevitably shifts to whether they're using that power fairly. The sources highlight a major antitrust lawsuit filed in April 2020, Davitashvili v. Grubhub, Inc., which named DoorDash and its main competitors.
And the core allegation here is crucial. Using monopolistic power to enforce something called price parity clauses in restaurant contracts, we need to clearly define what that means for the listener.
Think of it this way. DoorDash, as a condition of being listed on its high-traffic platform, required restaurants to sign contracts. And these contracts stipulated that the price of a menu item on the app must be exactly the same price as the menu item if you were to order it directly inside the restaurant for dine-in.
So the delivery price has to match the dine-in price. Why is that considered anti-competitive or, monopolistic?
It's because of the fee structure. Delivery apps charge these enormous fees to the restaurant, ranging from 13% to sometimes 40% of the entire order revenue.
And the average profit margin for a restaurant is notoriously tiny?
It's tiny, often between 3% and 9%. The restaurant simply cannot absorb a 30% or 40% fee and still make a profit on that delivery order without raising its prices.
And this leads directly to the plaintiff's key argument in the case, the subsidy claim.
Correct. Since the restaurant is required to maintain this price parity, they have no choice but to raise the base menu price across the board for everyone, regardless of how they order, just to cover the high delivery fees.
So if I go into the restaurant myself and order a burger for $12, the plaintiff is arguing that $1 or $2 of that price increase is effectively a subsidy I'm paying to cover the cost of the delivery app's fees for someone else ordering that same burger at home.
That is the perfect analogy. The lawsuit alleges that dine-in customers who bypass the app entirely are forced to subsidize the exorbitant logistics costs of the delivery system.
So the price parity clause fixes prices across the market and restricts fair competition.
And it forces customers who are buying directly from the restaurant to pay more. If this lawsuit is successful, it could fundamentally restructure how delivery platforms can interact with merchants. The case is seeking treble damages for alleged overcharges going back to 2016.
Which could easily be in the billions.
Easily. The outcome is critical because it challenges the economic foundations of the entire food delivery ecosystem. The legal system is really grappling with whether this business model is inherently monopolistic just because of its structure.
Beyond these big structural antitrust issues, DoorDash also faced significant controversy related to unauthorized listings and deceptive practices regarding individual restaurants.
This really surfaced in a big way in 2021. DoorDash was criticized for listing restaurants on its platform without the merchant's knowledge or permission.
They claimed this was about providing service coverage.
Right, but it created massive problems for restaurants that wanted control over their brand, their pricing, and their product quality during transit.
And the specific anecdote cited in our sources, the lawsuit filed by Lona's Little Eats, a St. Louis restaurant, it really illustrates the gravity of this practice. What did that restaurant claim?
Lona's Little Eats claimed DoorDash listed them, but because the restaurant had not paid a listing fee or signed a partnership agreement, DoorDash would allegedly prevent customer orders from being completed.
So what would happen?
The platform would claim the location was too far away or that the restaurant was unavailable, and then it would redirect customers to a different restaurant that was a paying partner.
So listing the non-partner was effectively a way to capture the demand for that restaurant and then just reroute that demand to a paying competitor.
That's the allegation. And the sources confirmed that this practice isn't just legally dubious, it is specifically illegal under certain consumer protection laws in California.
This behavior, coupled with the immense pressure on small businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic, led to state intervention. We saw the city of Chicago file a major lawsuit in August 2021 against both DoorDash and Grubhub.
Yes, the Chicago mayor's office accused the companies of breaking the law by using unfair and deceptive tactics that took advantage of struggling restaurants and consumers during that crisis. This was a direct accusation by a major municipal government that the platforms were acting in bad faith toward the businesses that rely on them.
Okay, let's turn now to consumer pricing and regulatory fines, where the complaints get hyper-specific about platform integrity and local law compliance.
The first example is an absolutely unique allegation, the platform discrimination suit from 2023. This is an ongoing U.S. $1 billion class action suit accusing DoorDash of charging iPhone users more than Android users for identical orders and fees.
$1 billion is a massive figure for that kind of allegation. And while the company denies the claims, the existence of a suit this large shows the intense granular scrutiny being applied to their pricing algorithms.
It suggests that even the operating system you use might dictate the price you pay.
And this scrutiny extends to their labor algorithm compliance with local regulations. Even outside the massive settlements we talked about, they face penalties for noncompliance, like the 2023 Seattle sick time violation.
And this specific local fine is relevant, even in the context of global acquisitions and billion-dollar valuations.
Why is that?
Because it sets a precedent for compliance and future operational costs nationwide. Seattle has specific safe and sick time ordinances that apply to gig workers. And DoorDash was found to have made it intentionally difficult for its Dashers, who were covered under Seattle's law, to request and use that paid time off.
And the consequence was a $1.6 million obligation.
Yes. The breakdown is $1.1 million for safe and sick time credits the drivers should have been able to access, $500,000 paid directly to the drivers as a penalty, plus $8,500 in city fees.
So this demonstrates that their algorithm, which is designed for a national or global template, has to be localized and made compliant with every single city's labor laws.
It increases their complexity and operational cost exponentially across the 45 countries they now serve.
Finally, the legal issues extend to data privacy, a crucial battleground for any tech company.
Absolutely. In February 2024, DoorDash paid a $375,000 civil penalty to the state of California after being found to have illegally sold personal data. They were obligated to come into compliance with major state privacy laws, the CCPA and CalPA.
Which highlights that the immense amount of consumer and driver data they collect is not just an asset for operational efficiency.
But it's also a massive legal vulnerability if it's handled incorrectly.
So we've painted a picture of a company defined by twin pillars. Astonishing growth fueled by capital and acquisition on one side.
And continuous costly legal battles over labor, market conduct, and now consumer data on the other.
Let's conclude with Section 5, the evolving landscape, financializing fast food and social responsibility.
DoorDash is relentlessly seeking new revenue streams and new ways to leverage its platform. One of the most recent and, frankly, most criticized developments was the announcement of the Klarna Buy Now, Pay Later partnership in March 2025.
So you can finance a burrito. This partnership lets customers use Klarna, a BNPL service, to schedule small payments over time for their takeout and grocery orders.
That's the premise. And the reaction from the media and the public was immediate, intense, and overwhelmingly negative. Our sources noted widespread criticism and what they called internet mockery.
I remember the term that was trending everywhere, the phrase collateralized DoorDash obligations. We need to unpack that for the listener because it's a deeply loaded financial metaphor.
It is. It's a direct reference to the complex debt instruments, specifically collateralized debt obligations, CDOs, that played a central role in triggering the 2008 financial crisis.
So by mocking the BNPL offering as collateralized DoorDash obligations, critics were applying one of the most toxic pieces of financial jargon to the most mundane consumer activity, ordering dinner.
It's a harsh condemnation. It suggests that the company is taking an already precarious financial product, BNPL, and applying it to the least necessary purchase takeout, thereby contributing to systemic financial instability among low-income consumers.
That's precisely the gravity of the criticism, and it was voiced by publications like CNN, NBC News, and Newsweek. They raise alarms that linking BNPL to small, everyday fast food purchases is exploitative.
Right. Why would a customer need to finance a $30 meal over 4 installments? It suggests a troubling underlying economic trend, where basic consumption requires credit, which just exacerbates household debt.
It turns the platform from a convenience service into a potential debt trap.
It's a striking contrast. a multi-billion-dollar company facilitating tiny debt obligations for a sandwich. Yet this same powerful company dedicates significant resources to social impact and philanthropic efforts. And that often gets buried beneath all the litigation news.
This is the dual face of the modern, powerful corporation. They do have some very notable philanthropic initiatives that leverage their core strength, logistics. Chief among them is Project DAH.
Project DAH started back in 2018. It's a partnership with food security organizations to deliver donations, and it fills a critical need for organizations that often lack their own logistical infrastructure.
And the scale of this initiative is undeniable.
It is. By 2019, it had expanded to 25 cities, and by September 2021, Project DAH was operating in over 900 cities and had delivered more than 15 million meals.
So they are using the exact same network of dashers that fuel the company's revenue to address food insecurity on a massive scale.
We also saw a major pledge during the peak pandemic era with the Main Street Strong program.
Launched in 2020 in partnership with the National Urban League, this was a 5-year pledge totaling $200 million.
And it was aimed at supporting restaurants and drivers struggling during the COVID-19 crisis. Crucially, $12 million was specifically dedicated to assisting drivers of color with building job skills and financial literacy. This shows an attempt to reinvest in the very workforce that is so often at the center of their legal battles.
And extending their community support to other vulnerable populations, we also note the 2022 partnership with Meals on Wheels.
Right, helping to deliver food to senior citizens. Again, just leveraging that powerful last-mile network.
When you hold these two sides up, Project DAH delivering 15 million meals, demonstrating incredible social utility, versus the litigation confirming they were actively rewriting code to hide tips from drivers, you just see the profound moral dissonance that defines this company.
That's it. They have the power and the infrastructure to do immense good, but the core business model relies on practices that have been repeatedly deemed deceptive or exploitative by courts and regulators.
And that tension between profound logistical power and the constant battle over laboring ethics, that really is the true legacy of DoorDash's first decade.
So to synthesize all the information we've reviewed, DoorDash's trajectory is a textbook study in the aggressive centralization and, I'd say, financialization of the last mile of delivery. They use their massive capital reserves to achieve dominance, that 56% U.S. market share, through strategic global M&A.
Yeah, exemplified by those 9-figure acquisitions of high-end platforms like Caviar, European giants like Wolt and Deliveroo, and strategic tech partners like SevenRooms.
But this extraordinary growth is inseparable from its cost.
Yeah.
You can actually quantify the financial penalties of operating this low-cost contract labor model.
We can. We've seen a $100 million settlement for driver misclassification, a $17 million settlement for actively docking tips from driver pay, a $1.6 million obligation for violating local sick time laws in Seattle, and a $375,000 fine for illegally selling personal consumer data in California.
These are the measurable, recurring costs of this specific corporate structure.
And what's fascinating is the enduring strategic focus. The company is structured to maximize shareholder value through expansion and diversification, including moving into services like BNPL for takeout.
But that structure is constantly under pressure from social and regulatory expectations about how basic labor should be treated and compensated globally.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener. Given the intense criticism surrounding the misclassification settlements, where 900,000 drivers received just $130 each, and the widespread public mockery of linking fast food purchases to toxic financial instruments via that Klarna partnership, how will the company ultimately balance the relentless demand from investors for continued expensive global growth with the mounting social and regulatory pressure to fully recognize and fairly compensate the vast network of delivery couriers upon which their $10.7 billion revenue stream entirely depends?
This tension between capital and labor isn't just DoorDash's problem. It's defining the future of the entire global service economy.